If you're gonna be dumb, you gotta be tough. When you get knocked down, you gotta get back up. I ain't the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I know enough to know. If you're gonna be dumb, you gotta be tough.
Welcome to another edition of the Florida State Simulcast. Today I'd like to ramble about the AP poll. It's been out for a couple days, obviously, already, but I'm really just looking at it because I didn't want to even sneak a peek at it after FSU, got their crap pushed in. But I've taken a peek at it, and there's some interesting things, some ridiculous things, too. That's usually how it goes early in the season. I wish they would just get rid of polls until about October. But anyway, so I'm going to, BS about the AP poll a little bit. And also talk about the FSU offense and defense. What can be done to fix the problem? Can it be fixed? I really don't know. I was talking with a guy on Twitter, and we're going back and forth on some ideas. And so I'm just going to throw some out there. But first, let's go ahead and delve into that AP poll. Number one, shocker, Bama stayed right there. But actually what was a little bit of a shocker to me was how Ole Miss hung with them. I was watching it kind of on and off. And then I stopped paying attention when Bama went up 48-30, I think it was. They had an 18-point lead, so I think that was it. And then come to find out the next day, Ole Miss clawed back in it and lost just 43-48. Now, I don't know if Ole Miss had ever had the ball with a chance to actually win late in the game, but the fact that Bama beat Ole Miss by just 5 was like, what the hell? And of course, made me do the stupid transitive property thing. It's like, Bama could only beat Ole Miss by 5. FSU beat Ole Miss by 11. How the fuck did they get blown out by 43 points to Louisville? Take nothing away from Louisville. They're clearly a good team. But how does a team do something similar to Bama and then also lose by 43 points? That is just mind-blowing to me. But transitive property really doesn't help right here because, FSU lost. But just thought that was interesting that Ole Miss kept it close. Number 2, Ohio State jumped up a spot. It's supposed to be a rebuilding year. We'll see. I mean, after Oklahoma, they don't really have any other tests except for, I guess, Michigan and Michigan State. So here comes another 11-1, 12-0 season for Meyer. Louisville jumped all the way to number 3, so good for them. I thought maybe they jumped to even number 2, but close enough. Fighting Harbaughs are at number 4, Clemson 5. Another Big Ten team at number 8 in Michigan State. And then Texas A&M rounds out the top 10. So that was 3 Big Ten teams in the top 10. So Big Ten bias. Let's see. Let's take a look at old FSU. Dropped to number 13. I thought they'd drop down to around 15 or 15 to 20. So 13, I wasn't that far off. Hey, if there's a rival out there that thinks they should not be even ranked, you could probably make the argument for that. A 43-point loss, that's ridiculous. But hey, I think it's worked out. Dropping to just number 13. Now, as I said on the reaction video, I don't think there's any way in hell FSU gets in the college football playoff, even if they run the table, and I don't think they're running the table. But theoretically, hypothetically, let's say they did run the table and finish 11-1. Again, I still don't think they'd go. You have a 43-point loss on your resume. It's just... But hey, if they win a few in a row, by this time October, fast forward a month from now, and let's say FSU has won all their games up to that point, I could easily see them go from 13 to 7 or 8 just by attrition. If they win their next 3 or 4 games over the next month, they'll be boom. Oh, look, FSU right back in the top 10, which would just be weird. That's a long way to go. I'm not even going to think about that. The rivals, in-state rivals, Miami at 15, which is just hilarious to me. Okay, and I can talk shit about Miami. You know why? Because Florida State's beat them 6 years in a row. So if you don't like it, suck it. They've moved up to number 15th And I could see why. They've beaten the crap out of FAU, FAMU, and Appalachian State. I mean, they're back. They're back, you guys. The U is back. We'll see, man. I'm curious to see when they actually play a real opponent, what happens. Before the season started, I assumed they would be better. How can they not be? Golden's gone. That guy was a clown. Richt may not ever win them a national title, but he's at least a competent coach. He at least has a damn clue what the hell he's doing. But year one, they still don't have the requisite depth as far as recruiting goes. They just don't. That's going to take Richt a couple classes. So they're not back yet. All right. What was it, 2013? They happened to just play pretty much nobody, and I actually went to this game. It wound up being a top 10 matchup, FSU versus Miami. I think FSU was like 3 or 4. Miami was like number 7, but everybody knew Miami was a freaking fraud. They weren't a real top 10 team that year. They had squeaked by Wake Forest the previous week, and of course, FSU blew them out that year. So I'm curious to see if this Miami team is a fraud. And by fraud, I mean they eventually plummet and finish the season 7-5, 8-4. That's what I mean. They lose a couple games, and hey, good on you, Mark Richt. If you get 10 wins this year, we'll see. And then Florida, where are the Gators at? They're the Gators, number 19. 3-0 as well. And this is, again, if you're 3-0 at this point, and you're any kind of known team, chances are you're a top 25 team, just based on attrition alone. It certainly isn't based off who you beaten, that's for sure. Just like Miami, UF has beaten Kentucky, which might be the worst SEC team. Who else they beat? North Texas. But I will say this, they held North Texas to just 53 yards. I don't care who the opponent is. That's impressive. And who was their other victory? Oh, UMass, which I think in the preseason poll, now they don't technically rank. You know, the AP doesn't give like a top 128 or whatever. But apparently, if they had, UMass probably would have been around the 128th ranked team. So they've beaten literally nobody of merit. But this week, they play Tennessee. And, okay, how can I put this? I won't be rooting for Florida to win, but I will be rooting for Tennessee to lose. The reason why, if you haven't discovered this guy named Big Vol Daddy, also known as BVD, YouTube him, watch his videos. The guy's a trip. Especially YouTube his It's a 10 IC. That was the first video I ever saw. It was his reaction video to Tennessee losing to Florida 2 years ago. Hilarious. Anyway, Florida's obviously beaten Tennessee 11 years in a row. And not all 11 years was Tennessee the worst team. So this year is one of those cases. They are the higher ranked team. They're home at Neyland. Florida's rolling in there with their backup quarterback, which is a Purdue transfer. If Tennessee can't stop the streak and it moves to 12, holy shit, man. If I was a Volunteer fan, I would quit being a college football fan for a hot minute. I mean, good God, I can't imagine losing to a rival. Screw it, losing to Florida 12 years in a row. I don't know what I'd do. I would be so apathetic at this point, I probably wouldn't even watch the game, honestly. The worst streak I've seen is 6 in a row, when Urban was curb stomping the hell out of everybody. FSU had a 6-game losing streak to Florida. So I can't imagine just multiplying that by 2. Like, anyways, I will be tuned into that game just to see if Tennessee loses, because I want to see that BVD guy's reaction video. It'll be hilarious. And if Tennessee wins, this video could still be entertaining, but it won't be nearly as entertaining. So Florida finally gets tested, and same with Tennessee for that matter. They've beaten nobody of note. And actually, they've struggled with Appalachian State and Ohio. And maybe they blew out Virginia Tech. So, okay, so they struggled every game. Other than that, Ole Miss and Oklahoma remain ranked despite being 1 and 2. Again, early season polls are stupid. Ole Miss, hey, like I said, they surprised me. They hung in with Bama. I don't know what the rest of their schedule is, but maybe they can have a good season. I pegged them for an 8-4 team, and they still might be that. I mean, with how many games they have left? 8 games to go. I mean, they'd have to win pretty much, 7 of the 8 to go 8-4. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm losing my mind. They have 9 games to go. I'm losing my mind. So 7-2, that wouldn't be shocking. But if they went 9-3, 10-2, hey, good. Hey, makes FSU's resume that doesn't matter look good. But yeah, interesting poll. I think the rivals where they're ranked. I think where Florida's ranked is just fine. I mean, based on attrition, 19, that's not totally ridiculous. I know they haven't played anybody, but someone's got to be ranked there, I suppose. Miami being all the way up to 15, I mean, they've really played nobody. And I think FSU was fortunate and only dropped to number 13. Again, it's probably not going to matter because guess what? FSU's going to lose another game at some point. So, but fortunate, hell, they didn't drop to 20, I guess. Anyways, enough about the poll. Let's talk about FSU's offense and defense. First, I'm going to start with the defense. What the hell can they do to fix it? Like I said, I was talking to a guy on Twitter last night. We're throwing around ideas, and it's all very simplistic stuff. So let me just say that before I get into it, and someone comments below and critiques, my football acumen. I'm not a coach. I'm not a football genius. I can barely tell you the difference between an A gap and a B gap, and a 3 technique D tackle versus a nose guard or some shit. Okay, so my suggestions are going to be very simplistic, but from a fan's point of view, we were saying, why the hell, and I know we're not the first fans to say this, but why the hell do they not just simplify the defense? You have an insane amount of athletes. When I did the Ole Miss FSU preview and actually made a spreadsheet where I listed FSU's defense and what their recruit ranking was, every defender was a 4 or 5 star except for like one guy. I think that was Hoskins. So you have 4 and 5 star guys littered. They're playing slow right now because they're thinking too much. How about you guys stop running these exotic coverages and go to man? Now, I'm not saying go to man exclusively because obviously if you do that, you're going to be pretty predictable. But simplify it. Let's rewind to 2010. All right, for instance, that was Jimbo's first year. His defensive coordinator was Mark Stoops. Now, that defense did not have near the talent on paper that this defense has. And so, out of necessity, Stoops and Fisher kept that defense very simple. All right, we're keeping 4 down linemen. We're going to tell all our secondary members to keep everything in front of them, and we're going to force the team to go 10, 12, 13 plays, 80 yards down the field or 75 yards down the field after they receive the kickoff. That's how we're going to make them beat us. We're going to keep it very simple. Okay? And now they on paper have more talent. And I think it would behoove them to kind of switch back to that mentality. Like, all these receivers are running wide the hell open, all right? You guys are athletic as hell. Like, you're more athletic than pretty much every opponent you face, at least on paper. So how about the secondary? Keep everything in front of you. Let's not do all these exotic coverages all the time. And just give it a shot. The coaching staff has to make some change. They can't continue to teach what they've taught this year. Because 3 games in, they've had blown coverages each game. I don't mean one a game. I mean like plural. So if they come out doing the same shit, looking lost, not playing fast because they're thinking too much, then this is on the coaches yet again. Okay, they need to simplify it for these guys. Simplify it. And then occasionally throw a curveball in there. Some exotic coverage and blitzes and whatever. But just simplify it. I can't think of a more, simple answer than that. I'm not sure how you resolve the pass rush. I know they've had a okay sack number, but in general, when you watch, like, the line doesn't seem to get a ton of push. It really doesn't. I don't know how they can correct that. I don't know if it's just a personnel thing or they maybe need to blitz more. like I said, I'm not a football genius, but at least starting with the secondary, that's got to be fixed ASAP. A freaking sap, dude. Like just simplify it. You, they have to. They have to. I mean, you got McFadden, who's a first year starter. You got Marcus Lewis, who's a first year starter. You got AJ Westbrook replacing Derwin James, and he's a first year starter. So you do have some fresh faces in that secondary, and clearly they're not playing loose and fast. They're playing slow and they're thinking. Change that. Change it. All right. You can have your offensive and defensive philosophies, but at the end of the day, and quite frankly, I hear people say that anyway. But anyways, at some point, you kind of need to crumble that up a little bit and toss it to the side and just create a scheme that fits the players because it's not fitting right now. So do what you got to do to put your players in the best position to win. And again, I'm sure these coaches know that. They have to know that. They make millions of dollars, but not seeing it on the field yet, 3 games in. So that's my little general simplistic recommendation to fix the defense. And I know I'm not the first to recommend that. And I hope to see a change where South Florida, okay? If you can't beat Florida by keeping it South Florida, excuse me, by keeping it simple, then this team is just completely lost. Like literally and figuratively. Okay, moving to the offensive side of the ball. This is where it's hard for me to come up with something, honestly. I guess like anywhere else, you got to start in the trenches. And so far, I think the offensive line has allowed 11 sacks. So, and that is worst in the ACC. So number one, obviously you got to protect the quarterback. How do they go about doing that? I don't know if it's a scheme thing or a man thing, honestly. I've read yesterday that Brock Rubel is now taking first team reps at right tackle. Doesn't exactly light a fire under my dress seeing Brock Rubel out there. Okay. Now, will Wilson Bell finally play in this game? Will they finally have their full complement of starters? Not counting Leonard, I guess, if Rubel's out there. We'll see, but I don't know if that's really the issue. It's just getting all their guys back. Maybe it's a scheme thing. FSU likes to run a lot of zone blocking. They'll do a lot of stretch shit with Dalvin and the running back so they can create cutback lanes. And so to the casual fan, when they see defenders just running free through the line, they don't realize that that's sometimes a part of the blocking. They just don't line up man for man like you block him, you block him, you block him, you block him. They don't do that every play. That's not their offensive line or offensive philosophy. They do a lot of zone blocking and shit. But maybe, just like in the defense, maybe they need to switch that up a little bit because clearly the offensive line's having issues with it. And I know they have young people, last week especially, with Dickerson in there at right guard, true freshman, and then Leonard at right tackle, making his 3rd career start at that position. So I know youth is a problem, but maybe simplify it. Stop, maybe run a little less zone, maybe do a little more, hey, man for man blocking. I don't know. Again, I'm not a football genius. I don't know if that's the answer. But some change has got to be made. 11 sacks in 3 games. I mean, Francois is going to get killed. Moving to, I guess, the quarterback position. I have no problem with Francois not being great this past Saturday. Okay? He's a first-year starter. He lit the world on fire against a bad Ole Miss secondary week 1. And then he really came crashing down to earth against Louisville. I didn't think he would crash this hard against any opponent, but he did. Okay? But I think he deserves a pass. It's his first true road game against, now a top 3 team. So I think he gets a pass, but he's going to have to learn some of the nuances of Jimbo's offense. By that I mean audibling, doing line checks, protection checks. There's been a few times in this short season, this early season, where you'll see the defense coming up to the line like they're going to blitz, and then the ball is handed off to Cook right in the direction of that blitz. It's like you're a redshirt freshman, but he's going to have to comprehend that quicker. Like, look, you need to check out of that play, or if it's at a passing down and they're presenting, pass rushers from a certain side or whatever, you need to adjust. He needs to be able to adjust the protections, you know. And Bud Elliott from Tomahawk Nation noted this, and it's nothing, totally profound or ingenious, but Winston, other than his physical talents, his football IQ, his acumen was so high that it made everyone around him better because he almost without fail audible to the correct play, made the correct check on protections. And that's something Francois is going to have to do to not only help his lineman, but to help himself from getting killed. Okay. And that's probably just going to come with more time and experience. I still think Francois is going to be a very good quarterback. I do. This might be his floor. Ole Miss might be his ceiling. He should find himself somewhere in the middle by season's end. He has the physical tools. I think, other than getting blocking, as far as his blockers being able to physically stop people, he needs to also be able to help himself with making the right protection checks and audibling to the correct play and not holding onto the ball as long. There were some sacks he's taken this year where he simply held onto the ball too long. But again, giving him a pass. I guess moving on to Cook. Everyone's saying it now. It's finally on ESPN. Those breaking news motherfuckers right there. Finally, someone wrote an article about what's wrong with Cook. I think it was Jared Shanker, which I don't know the guy, but he just comes off as a tool. I don't know if he is or not, but anyway, he finally made something about what's wrong with Cook. And it's hard for me to disagree. Something seems physically wrong with him. And if this offense is going to improve, they need the 2015 Cook. And Jimbo claims that Cook's perfectly healthy. They have that GPS system where they monitor, heart rate and all kinds of crap. And apparently his speed, which is monitored, can be monitored as well, is the same. Okay, well then what's going on? Other than the crap blocking, what else is going on? Because he doesn't look like the same guy. Moving out to receivers, Rudolph has been pretty consistent this year. I thought it weird during the Louisville game that when Swat did have time and then he took a sack from holding it too long, and you couldn't see it from the broadcast cam, but I wish they would have showed like the all 22 perspective. Sorry, brain fart. I wish they would have shown that perspective more because a few times I was like, okay, he's holding the ball, he got sacked. You're telling me no one's open every single time? Now, a couple times when they did show the all 22, people were covered. I go, okay, well, can't throw it if people are covered. But it was it's happened a handful of times. I was like, they can't all be covered. So are these receivers just not doing a good job of getting open? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I do like the fact that Auden Tate is starting to get mixed in a little more. He only has a few catches on the year, but 3 of them are for touchdowns. And said this before the beginning of the season. A lot of other fans said it too. They need a dynamic, big size receiver, and he's like 6'5", 220. And so he could help. I don't know how quickly this offense can get fixed. More so the offensive line specifically. How can they fix that? Because like I said, it could be a physical thing where they just don't have the guys that are ready yet. They had 19 scholarship offensive linemen. The class they brought in on paper looks to be incredible. But chances of them contributing this year are slim and none. I mean, the fact that Landon Dickerson got a start as a true freshman was nice. But maybe that's more of a 2017 thing where this line can get better. Where you have all those highly rated guys, a year in the weight room and looking at the playbook and what have you. So maybe it won't be till next year till the O-line's fixed. I will say this. I do not think the O-line is actually worse than last year's. Okay, and I know that sounds weird to say, but I think up until the Saturday, yes, it looked just as bad. But I think overall, in general, this line is better than last year's. It's just they got to be able to show it. I don't know if Rubel's going to help, or maybe they change up their blocking scheme, which I don't see them throwing away, crumbling up their offensive, blocking philosophy, just throwing that away and starting over in game 4. Coaches have their shit, and that's their shit, but we'll see. I don't know. I just hope they beat South Florida comfortably. And I don't mean by 20, 30 points. I mean, there's no question FSU is going to win the game. As you're watching it, at no point do you really feel a true threat from South Florida. But I get the feeling we're probably going to. At this point, just give me the W's. After you get slaughtered by 43, going forward, just get the W's. I mean, honestly, there's no reason to try and put on a show at this point. Just get the W's, man. That's all I could say. So, do you have any suggestions how to fix either side of the ball? I just offered a few general, simplistic ideas that I'm sure the coaches have had to consider. They've had to literally go back to the drawing board. They've had to. They can't just keep doing what they're doing. I mean, what's Einstein's definition of insanity? You keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So there has to be at least some change, some kind of change. If not, I'm going to be like, what the fuck are we doing here? What are we doing? What are we doing? Anyways, let me cut this. Went on a little longer than I wanted to, but I was just kind of thinking out loud after the conversation last night. I was like, let me go ahead and just throw up a podcast today about what the hell to do about the offensive defense. Because honestly, I had those couple suggestions, but I'm fairly clueless. So someone that's played the game maybe can comment below and tell me what the hell can be done. Some people just want to fire coaches right now. Who knows? That could be another solution. Chad Kelly was bad his first year, gave him a pass because year 1 last year, the defense played much better. But as someone pointed out to me, FSU did face a ton of bad offenses last year. So maybe that was a bit of an illusion, or, maybe that was a little bit of a fraud last year, maybe. I don't know. And of course, this year, they've given up the most points the school has in the first 3 games of the season. So maybe Kelly has to go. I don't know yet. I really don't know. I mean, maybe. A lot of people each year or every other year like to get on Trickett. And I commented in my Louisville reaction video in replying to someone, I said, I'm actually not that pissed off at Trickett, or I'm not a Trickett hater like some people are. He's been at the school a decade, and there's been a couple down seasons as far as offensive line, but usually that's coincided with either a ton of injuries on the O-line or a ton of youth, or both. But by and large, the offensive line has been good. I can say this, why? Because, well, number one, his offensive linemen have won conference and national awards, whether it be the Jacobs Blocking Trophy for the ACC or, I can't think of an offensive line for the national award. You know what I'm talking about. I can't think of them. They're the National Offensive Lineman's Award, whatever. So his linemen have won awards. They've been drafted. He's had a good amount of offensive linemen drafted. And FSU's won a ton of games during Trickett's tenure. And you usually cannot win as many games as FSU has had from year to year with just horrible, shitty offensive line play. That usually just doesn't happen. You usually have to have, in general, good offensive line play to consistently win at a high level. You just do. So I'm not as fire Trickett as some people are. Am I a little annoyed at some of the inconsistencies depending on the year? Yes, of course. I look at teams like Bama and see that they just reload on the O-line every year, and every year it seems to be incredible. But overall, I think Trickett's done a fine job. If you want to disagree with me, that's fine. I understand your frustrations, and you'll point to different seasons. But overall, if you really look at it, his linemen have won awards, they've been drafted, and FSU's won a lot of games. So, not ready to kick him to the curb yet, but, he could be a solution. Who knows? I could be completely wrong. Dossie's another one that someone commented. I forgot your name right now. That commented, he brought up Dossie as well. If you listen to some of my older podcasts, I've been done with Dossie. I've been done. He's been at FSU a decade and has had two wide receivers drafted in the decade he's been the wide receivers coach. That is inexcusable. That shows lack of development. With the type of athletes that FSU brings in at that wide receiver position, to only have two of them drafted, and those are Kelvin Benjamin and Rashad Green, to only have two drafted is pathetic. And Kelvin and Rashad could have got drafted if I coached them with a blindfold. Okay? And not to mention, he's not even like one of the top probably 3 or 4 recruiters on the staff. So he doesn't even recruit out of this world either. I think he has the Tampa district or the Tampa area as his recruiting base. And every year, for the most part, the best players from Tampa go to UF or they go somewhere else. So yeah, you can already kick Dossie to the curb. I won't care. Trickett, I'm still cool with for the most part. He's not perfect by any means. And then Kelly, I'm not really attached to Kelly one way or the other, so I don't know if he's the answer, if getting rid of him or not. By all accounts, he's an intelligent guy, but maybe he needs to go. I don't know. Let me wrap this up. Rambling as I usually do at the end of these. Comment below. Let me know what you think FSU should do. Please. I mean, I'd like to know. Anyway, if you're a first-time visitor to this channel, thank you for listening, and feel free to subscribe. This has been another Florida State Simicast. I'm out.